welcome to week 3. This week in Psych 101, we are going to discuss sensory perception and subliminal messages. So you will have an assignment this week on subliminal messages. So I wanted to touch a little bit on that in this week's lecture. So as I stated, we are going to talk about sensory perception and subliminal messages. And sensory perception has to do with how our 5 senses, which are our sight, sound, touch, taste, and smell, how they process and interpret the world around us. So think of like a cake, and you smell this delicious cake, and then you start processing, and it maybe triggers memories. That's our sensory perception. Subliminal message has to do with exploring the concept of those subliminal messages and their impact on our behavior. So for example, smelling that cake maybe triggers some memories for you about grandma's house. And so those memories, maybe they start helping you to make some decisions, right, about going to see your grandma because you smelled that cake and it reminded you of her. Other ones are subliminal messages to change your behavior, maybe to stop eating those cakes and sweets because of the health benefits of not eating them. And then we've got the connections between our senses and subliminal cues. And again, this is where we investigate that relationship between the sensory perception and the way those subliminal messages can influence our subconscious. For example, some people may see a scale and that may trigger them certain subconscious that they need to exercise more or cut back on sweets, things like that. So this presentation is going to cover the interplay between sensory perception and subliminal messaging, and it's going to shed a little bit of light on how these concepts shape our behavior. All right, so as we discussed, we have sight, sound, touch, taste, and smell. Sight is obviously what we see through our eyes. It's the world around us that we see. Sound is what we hear, and that can be sounds such as language, but it can also be noises and various sounds. Then we've got touch, and that can be physical touch. It can be temperature. It can be pain, anything like that. We've got taste. This involves sweet, sour, lots of different flavors. Our taste buds are on our tongue, and so that is our taste. But remember, our taste is impacted by our smell. And the smell has to do with those odors or scents in the environment. Some are pleasant and some are not. Sensory perception, as we talked about briefly, this has to do with how our brain interprets the information, and then that information is brought to our brain from our senses, from our sight, sound, touch, taste, and smell. Then it's processed, and this processing is used to help us understand and interact with the world around us. This allows us to perceive and respond to various stimuli. So for example, you may feel, which is your touch, something very hot, and it may burn you, and that pain therefore causes a response to that stimuli. You probably will not be touching that hot surface again because it triggered a response. I love this quote by James Vicari. The power of subliminal messages is that they work on us without our conscious awareness. So these are the types of subliminal messages. We've got visual subliminal messages. These are ones where we see them very briefly. They can include images or symbols, text that are flashed on a screen. This is used commonly in marketing. You may notice in commercials, for example, where you will see the emblem or the logo. That is a visual subliminal message. We've also got auditory ones, and these can be embedded with music, noise, or other audio content. A lot of times you'll see this in, for example, sleep messages or relaxation messages, telling you to breathe deeply, to take those long, deep breaths. And then we've also got some sub-audible subliminal messages. And these sound frequencies are either too low, which is infrasound, or too high, which is ultrasound, for the human ear to perceive. But it can still have effect on the subconscious mind. Some of you may know that there's like an app out there that they will play these high-pitched noises, and whether or not you hear them versus like whether a dog or an animal hears them. Those are those sub-audible subliminal messages. And each of us has our own threshold of what we can and cannot hear. Nevertheless, those subliminal messages can take various forms, from visual cues to auditory and even these sub-audible stimuli. But they help us to understand the world around us, and they do impact both our perceptions and our behavior. Let's talk a little about the power of subliminal messaging. So we talked about what it is. It's a hidden message or stimuli. Sometimes within media, advertisements use it. For example, you might see an ad in a magazine that will have the perfume right on there. And that is a smell subliminal message. Some are not even consciously detected. Some, as we said, are visual with a logo or an emblem. And then those subliminal messages are used in advertising to influence our behavior. One that I like to share with you is, if you've ever been to Disneyland, they actually push smells and scents down on Main Street by the bakery. And so, for example, they will push that sweet smell of chocolate, their chocolate candies, and they will push that smell right there through the vents on Main Street. This is to trigger us to want to eat that and want to buy it. And this is the extent to which the subliminal messaging is effective. And even though it's debated, because some people may walk by and not buy that chocolate candy in Disneyland on Main Street, but others may not have the willpower to say no. And so the power of subliminal messaging, it remains an area of ongoing research, whether or not it is effective. So let's conclude this. Sensory perception is a multifaceted process, and it involves the intricate interplay of these various physiological and neurological systems. It's very complex, which makes it a fascinating field of study. It's still a debate as to whether or not subliminal messaging is effective. It may be effective in some forms and maybe not in other forms, or it may be based on the human and that person, that actual individual. Navigating the world effectively. Understanding the concepts of sensory perception and subliminal messaging can help us to navigate that complex, ever-changing world. Knowing that this is out there, knowing, for example, social media will put these various subliminal messages out there for us, being more aware may make us less likely to act upon it, or more likely, depending on who we are as a person. But it will indeed shape our individual experiences. So we still need to continue the research in exploration, looking at the various intricacies of sensory perception and subliminal messaging. There's a lot still to be learned about this, and something that you will be investigating in this week's assignment as well. Lastly, here is a quick suggested reference for you. It talks about the effectiveness of subliminal messaging. It is a research article, so feel free to take a look at that as you work on your assignment for this week. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I am here to help you, and you guys can message me through Canvas or at my email, jgaynor@fortiscollege.edu. Thank you.